The rain had stopped only minutes before Hale stepped out of the downtown parking garage, but the pavement still glistened like polished obsidian beneath the streetlights. He tugged his jacket closer as a gust of cold wind rushed through the narrow street. Even after all these years, San Moren's winter air held the same sharp bite he remembered from his childhood. But today wasn't a day for nostalgia. Today was supposed to be a celebration. Michael was early, he always was, but especially today. He wanted everything to go right. He wanted the evening to feel warm, meaningful. Like a family gathering. Something he hadn't been part of in years. Tonight, he would have dinner with Emily. His only daughter. After 8 years of silence. He had replayed the conversation that led to this reunion at least 100 times in his head. It happened 2 weeks ago, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when his phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. He'd almost ignored it. He rarely answered unknown callers. But something, maybe instinct, maybe hope, made him pick up. Dad? It was her. Emily. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with uncertainty, like she wasn't sure she had the right to call him Dad after so long. Michael had choked on a dozen emotions all at once. Relief. Sadness. Anger. Love. It was too much to hold, too heavy to respond to. Now, standing outside the restaurant she had chosen, all those emotions surged through him again. Riverton House. He stared at the entrance, remembering it as one of the fanciest places in the city, white tablecloths, chandeliers like crystal waterfalls, menus without prices printed on them because anyone eating there wasn't supposed to care. He had eaten here once, back when he'd been a rising regional manager at his company, still young enough to dream of promotions and still foolish enough to believe promises made in passing. He never imagined he would return here under circumstances like this. The restaurant glowed warmly from inside. People waited outside under the heated canopy. Conversations drifted through the glass. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Families getting photos taken at the entrance. Exactly the kind of place one would take a loved one after far too long. Michael inhaled deeply and stepped inside. The scent of roasted garlic, fresh bread, and something rich and buttery washed over him instantly. The place was crowded, too crowded for a Monday night, but it made the room feel alive. A hostess approached him with a practiced, flawless smile. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," Michael said, shifting nervously. "Hale. For two." Her smile didn't falter, but something in her eyes flickered. Discomfort? Uncertainty? She scanned something on the tablet in her hands. "Ah. Yes. Reservation for 2 at 8. She hesitated. "Your party hasn't arrived yet." A knot tightened in Michael's stomach. "No problem. I'm a few minutes early." He looked toward the back of the restaurant, expecting her to gather menus. But she didn't. Instead, her smile stiffened. "Sir. The table assigned to your reservation is one of our family tables." He frowned. "Okay. Those tables are specifically designated for families or larger parties. We can't seat a single diner at them." "I'm not a single diner," Michael said. "My daughter is just running late." The hostess shifted uncomfortably. "I understand, but we've been instructed to seat family reservations only once the entire party has arrived." Michael's brows lifted. "Instructed by whom?" "Management," she said quickly. "It's policy." He exhaled slowly. "Look, she's only a few minutes away. Can't I just wait at the table? I made a reservation." Her polite expression wavered again. "Sir. If it were up to me, I would, but we've had issues before with guests who say others are coming, but then they dine alone and occupy the tables." Michael stiffened. "So you're saying I might be lying?" No, just that policy." "Does policy also assume fathers meeting their daughters after 8 years are here to scam a table?" She blinked, thrown off. Michael immediately regretted his tone. He wasn't angry at her. Not really. His emotions were just too loud. Too tangled. The hostess swallowed, then tried again. "We can seat you at the bar while you wait." The bar? He almost laughed. Not because he was offended, but because he couldn't imagine sitting there, alone, staring at the entrance, counting every second until Emily walked in. It would feel pathetic. Desperate. But mostly, it would feel like he didn't belong here. Still, he nodded. "Fine." She led him toward the bar. As he passed the large round booths, family tables, Michael tried not to look directly at them. Happy couples. Kids in nice clothes. Parents fussing with napkins. The kinds of scenes that reminded him how long he'd been outside of the family he had built. He sat at the bar and ordered water. The bartender asked if he wanted anything stronger, but Michael shook his head. He didn't drink anymore. He'd made too many mistakes during the year after his divorce, and alcohol had a way of making him feel those mistakes all over again. He checked his phone. No messages. 7 minutes past 8. He typed, "I'm here. Everything okay?" He erased it before sending. He didn't want to seem pushy. Instead, he locked his phone and waited. 10 minutes passed. 15. He kept glancing toward the entrance, expecting to see her silhouette. The hostess gave him sympathetic looks from across the room. Finally, at 8:23, his phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I got held up at work. I'm almost there." 5 minutes, relief washed over him, but it was followed by something else. Something tight. A quiet ache. She was coming. But she was late. And she hadn't apologized beyond a quick text. He shook the thought away. This wasn't the time to dissect every detail. He was simply grateful she was coming at all. At 8:31, the doors opened, and Emily walked in. Michael stood instantly. She hadn't changed much, same brown eyes, same slightly curled dark hair that never stayed brushed for long, same small nose she got from her mother. She wore a blazer and slacks, clearly fresh from a long day at work. But she looked older. Tired. Hardened by life in a way that stabbed at Michael's heart. She saw him, and for a moment, her expression softened. "Dad," she said quietly. He swallowed the lump in his throat. "Hi, Em." They hugged. It wasn't long. It wasn't tight. But it was a hug. The first one in years. When they pulled back, she gave him a tentative smile. "You look good." "You too," he said. The hostess approached again, suddenly warmer. "Your table is ready now." Emily didn't seem to notice anything odd about the situation, but Michael felt a prick of irritation. Suddenly they were more welcoming now that she had arrived? The contrast stung. But he pushed the feeling aside and followed her to the table. Their booth was large, circular, and privately tucked into the side wall. A small lamp hung above it, casting soft light over the tablecloth. It was intimate enough to feel personal, but classy enough to feel important. Michael waited until they sat before speaking. "I'm glad you came." "I'm glad we're doing this," Emily said. But her voice lacked certainty. Questions hung between them. Heavy ones. Unasked ones. Years of silence weighed more than any words could. A waitress arrived, cheerful and composed. "Good evening. My name is Lila. I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I get you started with drinks?" Emily ordered a glass of white wine. Michael asked for sparkling water. When she left, the silence stretched again. Michael cleared his throat. "So, how's work?" "It's fine," she said. "Busy?" He nodded. "You're still at the law firm?" "Yeah. Partner track." She forced a smile. "Hopefully." He remembered when she told him, at 12 years old, that she wanted to be a lawyer because she liked arguing with logic. He had laughed then. It had been one of his favorite memories. He wondered if she remembered it too. He opened his mouth to ask, but she spoke first. "Dad. Before we get into anything tonight, I want to be clear about something." His heart stumbled. "Okay. This dinner. It doesn't mean everything's fixed." Michael nodded slowly. "I know. It doesn't mean I've forgotten what happened." He nodded again. "But I needed to see you. At least once. To talk about things." A thin string of hope tugged inside him. "I'm grateful for that." She held his gaze for a moment. Her eyes flickered with something, longing? Resentment? Confusion? Then she looked away. The waitress returned with drinks and menus, giving them a moment to adjust. The menu was as extravagant as he remembered: lobster, steak, pastas made with ingredients he couldn't pronounce. Emily scanned it casually. "So," she said, not looking up. "I hope you don't mind, but I picked this place for a reason." "A reason?" Michael repeated. But she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she closed her menu, folded her hands, and exhaled. "I want everything to be transparent," she said. "No pretending. No avoiding things." Michael nodded. "I agree. That's why I chose a public place. Neutral ground." Neutral ground. The words hit him harder than he expected. So this wasn't a celebration. Not really. It was a confrontation. She leaned back, studying him with a calmness that felt rehearsed. "I want to talk about the past, Dad. About what you did." Michael felt the blood drain from his face. He gripped his water glass, knuckles whitening. "Emily. I know I hurt you. And I've been waiting years for a chance to explain." She nodded stiffly. "Good. Because that's exactly why I'm here. Their meals arrived quickly, a luxury dish for each, both far pricier than anything Michael would have ordered on his own. Emily didn't seem to notice, or didn't care. As they ate, she asked hard questions. About the divorce. About the fight that ended everything. About the promises he broke. About why he left the way he did. About why he didn't fight harder for her. Michael answered each one honestly, even when the honesty made him hate himself. Emily listened, stone-faced, only occasionally looking away when her emotions threatened to show. He thought, hoped, things were getting better. That maybe this dinner was the beginning of something healing. But near the end of the meal, just as he began to feel a tiny flicker of warmth, the waitress returned with the check. She placed the folded bill on the table. Emily didn't look at it. Michael reached for it. He opened it. And froze. The number stared back at him. $2,217.48. His breath caught. Emily finally looked up, watched him, and said quietly, I know. She had expected this. And suddenly, so did he. This dinner. This reunion. This sentimental talk. It had all been intentional. Planned. Calculated. And Michael realized, with a sinking heaviness. This night was not about healing. It was about revenge. Michael stared at the bill as if the numbers might rearrange themselves into something less absurd. Something human. Something reasonable. But they didn't. The digits remained bold, sharp, and cold. $2,217.48. He blinked twice, swallowing hard. His hands felt numb, like they no longer belonged to him. The restaurant chatter faded into a low, indistinct hum. The warmth of the lighting suddenly felt harsh, like a spotlight exposing him. Emily watched him. Not with cruelty. Not with gloating. But with something far more unsettling. A calm, composed certainty. She knew exactly what this looked like. Exactly what it would do to him. Emily, he whispered, voice barely holding steady. This can't be right. This is expensive? She finished, raising one eyebrow. Yeah. It is. She took a slow sip of her wine. Michael searched her face. He couldn't see anger. Not the explosive kind. Instead, he saw something measured. Controlled. Like she'd been waiting a long time to feel this in control. He looked back at the bill. 2 entrees. 2 appetizers. A bottle of wine, one he didn't even drink. A dessert sampler she had insisted on trying. Service charge. Additional gratuity automatically added. All at astronomical prices. This isn't, Emily, this is more than my weekly paycheck. I know. So why? Why would you choose a place like this? He asked quietly. Emily's eyes softened, just for a second. Then they hardened back into polished stone. This dinner wasn't about food, Dad. Something inside Michael deflated. She had planned this. Every course. Every choice. Every silence. He put down the bill and exhaled shakily. So what exactly is this supposed to be? A punishment? A conversation, she said coolly. A mirror. A way for you to feel something you made me feel for years. He stared at her, confused. Emily. I don't understand. She tilted her head. Don't you? Her voice was soft, but it cut deep. You didn't think about the cost back then. What it would cost me to grow up without you. What it cost me emotionally, mentally, financially. She hesitated. And now you're feeling a fraction of what it feels like when someone leaves you to pay a bill you never agreed to. Michael swallowed the ache rising in his chest. I didn't leave you. You left Mom. Which is the same thing. No, he whispered, the old wound tearing open again. No, it's not. Dad, Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. You walked out on our family. You walked out on me. Michael's voice cracked. That's not what happened. Then explain it, she challenged. Explain what an 8-year silence meant. He inhaled deeply, gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned pale. This wasn't the place for this. This wasn't a conversation meant for chandeliers and linen napkins. But Emily had decided otherwise. You know your mother asked me to stay away, he said quietly. She made it clear I'd only make things worse. Emily froze. Just for a moment. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but she blinked it away. Mom was hurt. You hurt her. And she hurt me, Michael said gently. Both of us made mistakes. But I never stopped wanting to see you. I never stopped caring. Then why didn't you come? Her voice finally cracked, raw emotion pushing through her measured facade. Why didn't you come anyway? Michael hesitated. Because how did he admit that he had tried? That he had driven to her school half a dozen times but left before she saw him? That he had shown up at her birthday with a gift she never received because her mother intercepted it? That he had called so many times his phone bill had doubled, until her mother changed their number? He had spent years trying. But every attempt had felt like shouting into a void. And eventually, guilt and fear swallowed him whole. "I didn't come," he said softly, "because I was afraid you'd hate me." Emily stared at him. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. "I was wrong," he continued. "I should have fought harder. I should have knocked on every door. I should have pushed through every wall. I should have been braver." Silence. Pure, heavy silence. Emily looked down at her hands, suddenly unable to meet his eyes. "Dad," she whispered. "You don't know how many nights I waited for you." His chest tightened painfully. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I could change that." Her jaw trembled slightly. "Then why now?" she asked. "Why did you answer when I finally called? After all these years?" Michael didn't hesitate. "Because I never stopped hoping you would." Emily's throat bobbed as she swallowed. For a moment, she wasn't the cold, poised woman sitting across from him. She was the little girl he used to carry on his shoulders at the beach. The little girl who used to fall asleep in his arms while he read her bedtime stories. The little girl who used to call him Daddy, her voice full of trust. Then, just as quickly, the hardness returned. Hope flickered and died behind her eyes. She straightened, pulling herself back to the role she had chosen tonight. "I didn't come here to forgive you," she said stiffly. "I came here to tell you that what you did. It had consequences." Michael nodded slowly. "I know. And I want you to understand that those consequences were real. Tangible. They shaped who I became." He nodded again. She leaned forward slightly. "So yes. I chose this place on purpose. I wanted you to feel overwhelmed. I wanted you to feel pressure. I wanted you to feel what it's like when someone else's decisions leave you burdened." Her words landed like stones. Heavy. Unavoidable. But they weren't cruel. They were wounded. Hurt wearing the thin mask of vengeance. Michael exhaled slowly. "I'm not angry," he said softly. "If this is what you needed to say, then I'm glad you said it." Emily blinked at him, taken aback. "You're not upset?" "Painful things deserve to be heard," he said. "Even if they come with an expensive bill." Emily looked confused. Then frustrated. Then conflicted. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected defensiveness. Anger. Maybe guilt exploding into excuses. But he sat there calm. Sad, but calm. That disarmed her more than any retaliation could have. She shifted uncomfortably. "This isn't supposed to be easy for you." "It's not," he said simply. "But that doesn't mean you're wrong." She stared at him for a long moment. Then her gaze drifted to the bill again. "Are you going to pay it?" she asked quietly. Michael didn't flinch. "Of course." She blinked. "Dad. It's more than $2,000. "I know. You don't even earn that much in a week." "I know. So, why would you pay it?" He paused. "Because I owe you far more than money." Her breath caught. Her mask cracked, for real this time. "Dad," she whispered. But before she could say more, a man in a tailored suit approached their table. He had sleek black hair, a perfectly knotted tie, and the unmistakable air of someone used to being obeyed. "Good evening," he said. "I'm Aaron, the general manager. I understand there was a concern about the bill?" Michael frowned. No concern. I just need a moment to process it." The manager smiled professionally. "I understand. It's a premium establishment with premium offerings." Emily stiffened. Manager. Suit. Perfect timing. Michael realized. This man wasn't here by coincidence. He was here because Emily had requested something. Arranged something. Aaron placed a small black leather folder on the table. "This includes a breakdown of the charges, in case you'd like a detailed explanation." Emily didn't look at Michael. Michael didn't look at Aaron. Something was wrong. Something deeper than an expensive dinner. Something darker than a confrontation. This wasn't simply a symbolic bill. This wasn't just emotional payback. This had been arranged. Planned. Commissioned. By Emily. Michael exhaled, struggling to keep his voice steady. "Emily. What exactly did you tell him?" She remained silent. And in her silence, he found the truth. She hadn't come to heal. She hadn't come to talk. She had come to break him. Emotionally. Financially. Completely. But why? Before he could ask, Aaron the manager stepped aside politely. "Whenever you're ready, sir." Michael nodded numbly. He reached for his wallet. And Emily finally whispered. I needed you to feel it. Michael looked up slowly. Feel what? Her voice trembled, but her words were razor sharp. What it feels like, she said, to be abandoned with a bill you didn't ask for. Michael didn't move for several seconds after Emily said those words. The restaurant noise buzzed behind him like distant static, but he barely heard any of it. His pulse pounded in his ears, slow and heavy, as though his heart couldn't decide whether to ache or break. Emily looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling slightly. She had rehearsed this. Maybe for days. Maybe for years. She had built this moment piece by piece, like someone assembling a weapon from memories and unresolved hurt. Michael finally drew in a breath. Emily. I never abandoned you. She laughed softly, quietly, but there was no humor in it. Dad, I lived the story. I know exactly how it went. You know how it felt, he said gently. Not how it happened. Her eyes snapped toward him, sharp and wounded all at once. Is there a difference? Yes, he said. A huge one. The manager stood nearby, politely waiting, but Michael barely registered him. Emily's shoulders stiffened, and she looked away as if bracing for excuses. I'm not here to rewrite the past, Michael continued, his voice low. I'm here because you finally let me in. And if that means standing here while you tell me everything I did wrong, I'll take it. She blinked rapidly, her composure stretching thin. But she didn't give in. Words don't change actions, she said. No, Michael agreed quietly. But they can explain them. Emily scoffed. Explain why you left? Explain why you vanished without fighting for me? Explain why my childhood turned into two parents using silence like a weapon? His stomach twisted painfully. Emily. I didn't vanish. She lifted her head sharply. Then where were you? For birthdays? Graduations? Sick days? Court hearings? School plays? Her voice cracked. Where were you for me? Michael felt the world shrink to the size of that table. He had rehearsed 1,000 versions of this conversation in his mind, but none of them prepared him for the rawness of hearing it from her lips. From her pain. From her perspective. I tried, he whispered. God, I tried so many times. Emily's expression tightened. Then why didn't you keep trying? He exhaled shakily. Because every time I reached out, someone closed the door. She stiffened. Mom was hurting. I know, he interrupted, his voice soft. And she had every right to be. But she also locked me out. She changed the number. She moved without telling me. She told your school I wasn't allowed to contact you. Emily's breath hitched, but her jaw clenched. Mom wouldn't. She did, he said gently. I'm not blaming her. She was angry. She thought she was protecting you. Emily stared at him, searching his face for lies. If that's true, then why didn't you take her to court? Why didn't you fight legally? Because, he whispered, your mother had full custody. And I had nothing. Her eyebrows drew together. What do you mean? Michael hesitated, then forced himself to speak the ugliest truth aloud. I lost my job 2 months after the divorce. Emily froze. I didn't want you to know, he continued. I didn't want you to think I was a failure. I barely had enough to pay rent. Let alone attorney fees. I lived in a one-room apartment for nearly a year. Some weeks, I ate cereal for dinner. Emily stared at him, stunned into silence. And every time I scraped enough money together to come see you, to bring a gift, to show up. Your mom stopped me. Emily's throat tightened. She said you didn't want to see me. Michael closed his eyes briefly, as though the memory physically hurt. I wanted nothing more than to see you. She swallowed hard. The truth hit her slower than expected, like a tide rising around her feet, terrifying because she didn't know how far it would go. I wasn't avoiding you, Michael said. I was drowning. The sentence lingered in the air. Emily's gaze faltered. Her heart didn't soften, yet, but something in her expression shifted. Like a crack in a frozen lake, tiny but dangerous. Still, she held on to the role she had chosen tonight. The Avenger. The one finally in control. So even if that's true, she said tightly, you still disappeared for 8 years. That hurt me. It should hurt you, Michael whispered. It hurts me too. Every day. She blinked. Don't say that like. Emily, he interrupted gently, do you think I slept peacefully all these years? Do you think I woke up every birthday and thought nothing of it? I lived with the guilt. I lived with the regret. And trust me, no one punishes me more than I punish myself. Emily opened her mouth to argue, but her voice caught. She looked down suddenly, blinking hard. Her composure wavered. Why didn't you tell me any of this? she said finally, voice trembling. Because you never picked up when I tried. Her breath stilled. He continued softly, I called twice a month for almost a year. Sometimes every week. Your mother blocked my number. There was nothing more I could do. Emily pressed her lips together, a mixture of disbelief and grief twisting on her face. Mom always said that I didn't care, Michael finished quietly. I know. A tear slipped down Emily's cheek, one she wiped away quickly, as if hoping he didn't see. But he did. And it broke something inside him. I'm not here to blame her, Michael added. She did what she thought was best. But so did I. Emily's fingers trembled around her wine glass. Her breath came unevenly. She didn't want to believe him, not because she thought he was lying, but because believing him meant rewriting every painful memory she'd used to survive. Mom said you remarried, she whispered. I didn't. She said you were too busy with a new life. I never remarried, he said softly. I never even dated again. I couldn't move on. Not from you. Emily's eyes filled again. Michael reached across the table, not to touch her hand, but simply to be closer. You're my daughter, Emily. My only child. There was no replacing you. Ever. Her lips quivered. For the first time that night, her anger slipped. But anger was easier to hold than heartbreak. So she grabbed onto it again. Even if everything you said is true, she whispered, it doesn't erase what I felt growing up. It doesn't erase the years I wondered why I wasn't enough for you to stay. Michael's face crumpled. Emily. You were everything. I left your mother, not you. I never left you. She shook her head, tears spilling freely now, but that's how it felt. I know, he whispered. And that's why I'm here. To take responsibility. To take whatever you need to give me. Even if it's a $2,000 bill. She choked on a broken laugh, wiping her cheeks. He managed a small, sad smile. If it helps you heal. I'll pay $1 million. She inhaled sharply. The manager, still standing discreetly a few feet away, glanced between them, sensing the emotional tension but not daring to interrupt. Emily slowly steadied her breathing, forcing her expression back into something neutral. Something protective. Something that didn't reveal how shaken she really was. This dinner wasn't just about the money, she said quietly. Michael nodded. I know. It was about making me feel what you felt. She hesitated. Then nodded subtly. Did it work? She whispered. Michael looked at her with a depth of sadness she hadn't expected. Yes, he said. It worked. He slid his credit card into the bill folder, his hand steady now. But Emily. I'm not just here to feel pain. I'm here to understand it. Emily's eyes shimmered. And what if understanding isn't enough? What if I can't forgive you? He nodded gently. Then I'll still be here. Waiting. For as long as you need. Emily's lip trembled. Something inside her cracked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't hate me for doing this? He shook his head immediately. No. I could never hate you. She swallowed. Even though I planned this to hurt you? He held her gaze. It didn't hurt because you were cruel. It hurt because you were hurting. A silent tear fell onto her hand. For the first time that night, she didn't wipe it away. The manager stepped forward quietly. Sir, if you're ready, I can process the payment. Michael handed him the folder without looking away from Emily's face. Before the manager walked off, Emily reached out, fast, and grabbed the folder back. Wait. Michael blinked. Emily looked at the manager with a strained voice. Split the bill. Michael's heart dropped. Emily. No, she said firmly, still not looking at him. I want to pay my part. The manager looked between them. Of course. He took the folder and walked away. Michael stared at her, stunned. Emily. Her voice shook as she whispered, I didn't come here to destroy you. I just wanted you to feel something. Something close to what I felt. I do, he whispered. More than you know. She finally looked up at him, eyes red but clearer than before. Then maybe this doesn't have to end in pain. He exhaled, relief washing over him in warm, fragile waves. Maybe not, he said. But the night wasn't over. There was still something Emily hadn't told him. Something she kept tightly guarded behind her eyes. Something that would change everything. The restaurant felt colder that night, though Michael knew the temperature hadn't changed. What had shifted was him, his certainty, his patience, and whatever remained of his old self. He walked through the same glass doors, past the same polished counters, and into the same dining room where the waiter had humiliated him 3 weeks earlier. Only this time, he wasn't alone. He'd brought evidence with him, months worth of it. He took a seat at the corner table, the same one the hostess had once told him was for families only. Tonight, he had a different kind of family with him, a quiet man in a navy blue suit who introduced himself simply as Reynolds. A licensed mediator, an investigator, a strategist. But not a lawyer. Yet. Michael didn't want lawsuits. Not unless they forced his hand. Reynolds opened his folder. "You're sure you want to do this? Once we start, we don't stop halfway." "I've been stopped halfway my entire life," Michael replied. "Not tonight." The plan was simple: confront the restaurant with the truth and corner them with their own greed, their own whispers, their own carefully masked cruelty. But the execution, Michael knew, was going to rip open wounds he hadn't realized still pulsed inside him. Before he could say more, the manager, a tall man with a pressed shirt and the stiff posture of someone who believed he ran an empire, approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Cooper," he said, voice dipped in hospitality but tight at the edges. "We didn't expect you back." "I'm full of surprises," Michael said. "And you're? Guest?" "Here to observe," Michael replied, folding his hands calmly. The manager's smile flickered, confusion breaking the facade for a brief second. He gestured around the now busy dining floor. "If you'd like a table, I'm afraid we're booked for the evening." Michael leaned back. "That's strange. I made a reservation under Cooper. Section A, Table 12. The manager blinked. Table 12 was the same family table they had denied him before. "Let me double-check." He walked away quickly, almost too quickly. Reynolds watched him go and murmured, "He's nervous." "He should be," Michael said. While they waited, Michael let his eyes wander around the restaurant. Couples laughed. Families clinked glasses. Servers floated between tables with rehearsed smiles. Everything looked perfectly normal. Yet he saw the cracks. He saw how the staff avoided eye contact with the manager. How the hostess whispered something under her breath. How a waiter flinched when a plate dropped. This wasn't a well-run place, it was a controlled one. The manager returned, smile reinstated. "My apologies, Mr. Cooper, your table is available after all." "Of course it is," Michael said quietly, standing up. As they walked to table 12, patrons looked at him and Reynolds with mild curiosity. Michael ignored them. Instead, he let the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. The last time he sat here, they'd told him he didn't belong. Today, he was about to show them exactly how wrong they were. They took their seats. The menus were placed before them, but neither man touched them. "We won't be ordering," Michael said, before the waiter even spoke. The waiter hesitated, eyes darting toward the manager. "Sir?" Michael slid a thick envelope across the table. The waiter stared at it like it might burn him. "Please give this to your manager," Michael said. "Don't open it." The waiter took it with trembling fingers and hurried away. Reynolds tapped the table softly. "This part might get loud." "I'm counting on it," Michael said. It didn't take long. The manager opened the envelope halfway across the room. His face paled. Then flushed. Then tightened. He stormed toward the table with the envelope clutched like a weapon. "This is outrageous," he hissed under his breath. "Where did you get these?" "Security systems," Michael replied calmly. "Yours. Your cameras. Your storage logs. Your reservation data. And the recording of your waiter calling me a charity case when I left the day you refused me a seat." "That was taken out of context," the manager snapped. "No," Michael said. "It was taken exactly in context. I have 3 angles of it." The manager's breath hitched. "And the $2,200 bill?" Michael added. "The one you charged me for abandoning the table? Even after refusing me entry?" "You weren't supposed to see those charges," the manager muttered. "But I did," Michael replied quietly. "And so will the auditors." People at nearby tables had begun to notice the tension. A woman turned in her seat. A man whispered to his partner. Even the servers had slowed down, moving cautiously as though a storm hovered above table 12. "You think you can blackmail us?" the manager asked, voice trembling with anger. Michael leaned forward, lowering his voice but sharpening the edge of it. "I don't want your money. I don't want your job. I don't want a lawsuit. I want accountability. A public apology. A corrected bill. And a staff that doesn't punish people because they don't fit your idea of what a family should look like." The manager snatched the folder, hands shaking. I can't authorize this." "Then call someone who can," Reynolds said calmly. "We'll wait." The manager stepped away, shoulders rigid, retreating toward his office like a cornered animal. As he disappeared through the door, Michael exhaled, slow, steady, but waited. Reynolds looked at him. "You okay?" Michael swallowed hard. I felt small for a long time. Tonight. I'm trying to unlearn that. A few minutes passed. The hum of the restaurant dimmed, as though everyone sensed a shift in the air. Michael tapped the table once, a grounding gesture he hadn't used since his daughter was young. When she was nervous, he'd tap the table twice and she'd do it back. A quiet reassurance. A promise. He wondered if she'd understand what he was doing tonight. He wondered if she'd think it was petty. Or necessary. He wondered whether revenge was healing him, or consuming him. The office door opened. A woman emerged this time, older, composed, wearing a charcoal gray blazer. The kind of person who didn't raise her voice because she didn't need to. She approached with the envelope in hand and stopped at their table. "I'm the owner," she said in a steady voice. "Let's talk." Michael sat up straighter. The real confrontation had just begun. The owner pulled out the chair across from Michael and sat down without waiting for an invitation. Her expression was unreadable, calm, controlled, the face of someone who'd spent years navigating difficult conversations and cleaning up the messes left by others. "My name is Evelyn Hart," she said. "I've reviewed the contents of your envelope. Before we proceed, I want to hear from you directly. What outcome are you actually seeking, Mr. Cooper?" Michael stared at her, stunned by the directness. She wasn't defensive like the manager. She wasn't pretending. She was looking at him like a human being, something he didn't expect after all this time. "I want the truth acknowledged," he said quietly. "The humiliation. The false charges. The treatment." He paused. "I want to feel like I'm not crazy for thinking it mattered." Evelyn folded her hands. "It does matter." Michael blinked, caught off guard. She continued, "And I can already tell you, the behavior you experienced is unacceptable. This is not how we run this place. Or at least, not how we're supposed to." Her glance shifted toward where the manager was lingering near the office, pretending to sort papers while clearly eavesdropping. Reynolds leaned back, observing. He didn't interrupt. Evelyn turned to Michael again. "I'm prepared to reverse the charges, issue a public apology, retrain the staff, and suspend the manager pending further investigation." The room seemed to still, like the world exhaled around them. But Michael didn't react, not immediately. A strange emptiness hollowed inside him. Because the words, as reasonable as they were, didn't touch the ache he had walked in with. "That's good," he said slowly. "But it isn't what this started with." Evelyn frowned slightly. "Then what did it start with?" Michael looked down at his hands. "They told me that table was for families. Like I wasn't one." His voice cracked, barely audible. "Like I didn't count. Like my daughter didn't matter." Reynolds's gaze softened. Evelyn leaned in, listening closely. "My daughter is grown now," Michael continued. "We haven't been close in years. Not since her mother passed. And that day." He swallowed. "That day, I wasn't here for dinner. I came to sit at the place she used to love. To remember her. To feel connected." He rubbed his thumb over the edge of the table, eyes distant. "And instead, your staff told me I didn't belong here." Silence sank between them, heavy and undeniable. Michael hadn't planned to say any of that. It spilled out on its own, like truth pushed through cracks he'd been trying to seal shut. Evelyn exhaled softly. "I'm sorry," she said. And somehow, it wasn't performative. It wasn't corporate. It was human. But Michael wasn't done. "I didn't want revenge at first," he admitted. "I just wanted someone to care that it hurt. Then the false bill came. The lies. The cover-up. And suddenly revenge felt easier than grief, easier than admitting how small I felt." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I understand more than you think." She stood, signaling the manager to come over. He approached reluctantly, eyes darting between them. "Douglas," she said quietly, "you've put this establishment and this guest in a position that is unacceptable. You will step back from your duties effective immediately." Douglas's jaw dropped. "Evelyn, you can't." "I can," she said sharply. "And I am." He opened his mouth again, but this time she cut him off with a raised hand. "And before you say a word, let me remind you, there are recordings, statements, documents, and a guest who has shown more restraint than you deserve." Douglas looked at Michael with a mix of resentment and fear, but Michael didn't feel triumph. Just exhaustion. Evelyn turned back to him. "I'll handle the rest. I promise you that." Reynolds closed his folder. "That fulfills our terms." But Michael didn't stand. Not yet. He looked at Evelyn. "There's one more thing." She waited. Michael leaned forward, voice softer than before. "I don't want your apology for the public. I want your apology for me. Right here. Right now." Not as an owner. As a person. Evelyn's expression softened. I'm sorry, she said with sincerity that made Michael's chest tighten. You deserved kindness on a day when you were holding grief quietly. You deserved better than what my staff gave you. And I'm ashamed that it happened under my roof. For the first time in a long time, Michael felt something warm push against the cold in his chest, relief, fragile but real. Thank you, he whispered. Evelyn stepped away, instructing the staff to process the corrections immediately. Reynolds stood and adjusted his jacket. You did it, he said. Michael didn't respond right away. He looked around at the restaurant, the same polished floors, the same clinking glasses, the same hum of conversation. Yet everything felt different. He stood slowly, breathing evenly for the first time that night. As they walked toward the exit, he passed the table where a young girl sat with her father, laughing as she dipped fries into ketchup. The father tapped the table twice. The girl tapped back. Michael froze for only a second. He smiled, a small, aching smile, and continued walking. Outside, the cold night air wrapped around him, clean and grounding. Reynolds asked, "Do you feel better?" Michael thought about it. Truly thought about it. Not better, he said. But lighter. And revenge? Reynolds asked quietly. Michael looked up at the glowing sign of the restaurant behind them. It wasn't revenge, he said. Not in the end. It was a reminder, to them and to myself, that I still matter. That people like me matter. Reynolds nodded. They walked to the car, and for the first time in years, Michael didn't feel invisible. He didn't feel small. He felt seen, by others, yes. But most importantly, by himself. He took one last look at the restaurant. The place that had wounded him. The place where he'd reclaimed his voice. Not revenge. Closure.